could offer a riveting window into how these two heads of state interact face-to-face on issues of such sensitivity as alleged genocide against white Afrikaners who have been welcomed as refugees into the United States.
Some South Africans have meanwhile expressed mixed views on President Ramaphosa's visit to the U.S.
Can we be allowed to have South African solutions for South African problems?
President Ramaphosa and President Trump should focus on just trying to have benefits on both countries.
I don't think this meeting is going to yield any positive result.
So Ramaphosa should do as Trump is, firstly make peace. The South African government has attacked Israel in the ICJ. I think it's a huge mistake.
Personally, I do believe that Trump is just playing politics.
It's very important that all relations are intact for the good of our economy.
As a president of a country of over 60 million people, you need to know that you've got so many people backing up, so you shouldn't be bullied by a president from another country.
The U.S. Embassy in Libya has denied a report that the U.S. government is working on a plan to relocate Palestinians from Gaza Strip to Libya. On Thursday, the NBC News said the Trump administration is working on a plan to permanently relocate as many as 1 million Palestinians from the Gaza Strip to Libya. NBC News cited 5 people with knowledge of the matter, including people with direct knowledge and a former U.S. official. In April, Trump said Palestinians could be moved around to different countries. The South African National Prosecuting Authority says it will proceed with the appeal of the acquittal of Nigerian televangelist Timothy Omodoso. The televangelist returned to his country of origin, Nigeria, yesterday. Omodoso voluntarily opted to be deported after immigration authorities arrested him in East London in the Eastern Cape province earlier this month. The NPA says the law does not require active participation or presence of an accused person during a court's hearing of an appeal. It says if the appeal succeeds, it will apply for Omodoso's extradition. Leading Kenyan lawyer and the country's former Justice Minister Martha Karua says she has been deported from Tanzania to prevent her from attending the court case of opposition leader Tundu Lissu. 2 colleagues accompanying her were also reportedly detained and deported after flying in from neighboring Kenya. Lissu, who is the leader of Tanzania's main opposition Chadema party, is due to appear in court today after being charged with treason last month. Karua is a respected human rights advocate and a vocal critic of what she calls democratic backsliding in the East African country. Tanzanian authorities have not yet commented. Now, recapping on your top story, South Africa's President Ramaphosa is expected to arrive in the United States of America later today on a state visit to meet with his counterpart, Donald Trump. Top on the agenda is the strained relations between the two countries after American President signed an executive order offering South African white Afrikaners refugees on allegations that they are under attack. Now, for any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us at +27 11 714 4459. Channel Africa News, I am Onele Ntsinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective. For over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other. Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent. African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices: English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens, and Channel Africa makes sure of it. For business, for culture, for Africa, partner with Channel Africa because Africa's voice is the future. Africa is a story, a living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other. Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent, African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices: English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future.
Giving you news, information, entertainment from an African perspective. You're on the move with myself, Benjamin Mushatama and Palesa, taking you into the week with all the latest news on the African continent. Hey, we've got so much that we have for you today. We're going to start with a big debate, a Monday debate. I love those Monday debates because they make us think, they make us aware, they make us really reflect. So today we're going to be looking at universal health care. Do you think we can all get health care for free? Just like that? Healthcare feels like a luxury on the African continent. It feels like something that you really have to earn, something that you really have to work for. Why is that the case? We'll have the debate in a few minutes' time.
Africa Update on Channel Africa with Lulu Kabu.
Protesters in Ghana have accused the country's president of violating the constitution and interfering in the independence of the judiciary. Eric Mawena Egbeta, the opposition protesters calling for the reinstatement of Tokonu.
The presidency and the president and all of its spokespersons around the seat of government have had one narrative and one narrative only, that no constitutional breaches have occurred in the process up until now, which has resulted in the suspension of the Chief Justice. In fact, it does appear the government has already communicated to these protesters that we're not interested in having the Chief Justice return and fill her position until the determination of the matter. We believe that she must remain suspended for the investigations to take place, after which the final determination will inform whether or not she returns.
Africa Update with Lulu Kabu, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time. Get set and be ready to go. On the move with Palesa and Benjamin Mushatama.
Amor, wepi kinalelayo lokola kilao.
Brands, media planning, and advertisers. Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens, and Channel Africa makes sure of it. For business, for culture, for Africa, partner with Channel Africa because Africa's voice is the future. Africa is a story, a living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other. Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent. African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices: English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens, and Channel Africa makes sure of it. For business, for culture, for Africa, partner with Channel Africa, because Africa's voice is the future. Africa is a story. A living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other. Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent. African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices: English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity.
That is by Monique Tendai, 13 minutes past 9 o'clock Central African time. You are listening to Channel Africa, giving you news, information, entertainment from an African perspective. Hey, what's coming up today is a whole lot of stuff, but we start off with our wonderful debate on a Monday. We call it the African View, and today we're looking at this subject matter. Is universal health coverage fiscally and institutionally feasible in Southern Africa? Do you think so? I think it's a big burden. It is a weight on our shoulders as Africans. And, we know that here in South Africa, we're having this big debate about healthcare and its excess. We're calling it the National Health Insurance Plan, but the aspiration for universal healthcare is shared across the region. But turning that vision into reality has raised serious questions over the years. But underfunded health systems, infrastructure gaps, governance challenges, and economic constraints in Southern African countries face a balancing act. Can we turn the tide? Well, we're going to debate this today on The Africa View. We've got Dr. Vuyisi Mzukwa, who's a South African Medical Association chairperson. We've got Katlego Mutudi, Managing Director of the Board of Healthcare Funders, and Alex van den Heerver, who is an adjunct professor and chairperson of Social Security Systems Administration and Management Studies at the University of Witwatersrand. Thank you all for joining us. Seems like it's going to be a tough one, this one, because it's a big debate. Some people are for it. Some people are like, it's not going to be so easy to happen, especially when we look at it from the South African context. Let's start with you, Dr. Mvuyisi. Thank you for joining us on the show.
Good morning to you and to your listeners and to our fellow panelists. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about this. It's a big debate, right, in terms of when you leverage or try to look at the cost of healthcare, but most importantly, when you also try to leverage that with the concern of infrastructure gaps, especially in many African countries. Let's look at the South African context. What's your take of the feasibility?
Well, I believe that we need to look at a global context. We know that we have the United Nations Vision 2030, that talks about, in fact, it outlines the Sustainable Development Goals. And, we have that collaboration at that global level. So you would expect that at a regional level as well, you would have such a collaboration that talks to the same thing. Because if you look at it, it's not a nice to have. We must have it. We are obliged to have it, because if you look at what has happened during COVID-19, we contracted a virus away from the continent, from China. So you'd expect that, it becomes easier for that movement of viruses, with the movement of the people within the continent, especially within SADC. So you'd expect that collaboration to be there. But what we have noted is that that debate has not taken place at a political level. Because what we have seen now, we have seen a debate that centers around the economy, in what I would refer as transactional talks. But it does not extend or is not broadened, to healthcare. And that is amazing, because if you look at what is happening in reality, there are people are crossing borders, on either side, and you'd expect that debate would be there. And at some point, when we were asked about this question before, especially as it relates to financing, we had said that there should be that, whether you call it a memorandum of understanding or whatever framework that is put there by politicians, to say, if we have people coming from another country to coming to South Africa, we take data and everything else, and then we produce it there and say, these are the people that we're seeing, coming from SADC, obviously from different countries. We produce that data, but that is not happening. Instead, we see our colleagues, we've seen politicians shouting at patients instead of talking to their colleagues, around this matter. So you'd have to look at many things. You've got to look at the capacity that we have as the continent.
Sure.
In terms of the 6 pillars of a healthcare system.
And okay. Just pause there, and then we'll come back to you. Just want to consider the other pointers from our other guests. Let's bring in our other guests and hear their viewpoints on this one. Let me come to you, Katlego. Your take. It seems like Dr. Vuyisi is for this particular initiative of national health insurance. Do you think it's feasible?
I think maybe first we must disaggregate the discussion, or rather delineate NHI and universal health coverage. And Dr. Mzukwa has gone into some detail about why universal health coverage. And the starting point, I think, an understanding of what we seeking to achieve. If you look at what how it's defined, or the principles that it rests on, we're talking about provision of essential healthcare services, and to people where they are when they need them. So there can never be an argument against that. Whether we will be able to have far-reaching coverage, I think even our constitution in South Africa acknowledges that you can only provide these services to the extent that you can afford them. But the major part as well, when you discuss universal health coverage, you want to protect people from catastrophic expenses for healthcare. So we have to always look at the two components of the services that you want to provide that are essential or necessary. And secondly, that there should not be financial outlay. And I say we would progress, and I think even the NHI talks about the progressive realization. So when you look at maybe the African context and where we are, there has been reports that a measure that is used to assess the implementation of universal health coverage or the access to healthcare services is something called the service index. There has been an improvement if you look at the low to medium income countries, but only largely because they come from a low base. The report that we have globally is that there is stagnation to progressing towards universal health coverage. And ironically, this is recorded from 2015, when we moved from the Millennium Development Goals to be the more inclusive, sustainable development goals.
All right, Katlego, I'd love to stop you there for now. Apologies. I do want to continue hearing some opening statements from all of our guests, but now we need to take a very short break. We'll come back and also hear the opening statements of Professor Den Heerwe and hear what his stance is on the feasibility of universal health coverage. 22 minutes past 9 Central Africa time. We'll be back shortly.
Hi there. Do you want to elevate your business and give it a voice in South Africa and Africa as a whole? Well, in that case, let Channel Africa make this a possibility. Channel Africa is willing to advertise your business for as little as 30,000 rands or $1,719.18. To get access to these great rates, send all requests to mukwenata@SABC. That's MOKOENATA@SABC. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Benjamin Mushatama and Palesa on the move.
The inequalities faced all across the African continent show deep remnants of coloniality, other things like apartheid here in South Africa, but also the inequalities that still faced economically all across the African continent. One of the hugest burdens that are a reflection of these inequalities is our healthcare. And today we're finding out if universal health coverage is fiscally and institutionally feasible in Southern Africa. This is our debate this morning. We have on the line with us Dr. Mvuyisi Mzukwa, South African Medical Association Chairperson, Katlego Mutudi, Managing Director of the Board of Healthcare Funders, as well as Professor Alex van den Heerwe, who is the Adjunct Professor and Chairperson of Social Security Systems Administration and Management Studies at the University of the Witwatersrand. I'm going to come to you, Professor van den Heerwe. We haven't heard from you as yet and your stance on the feasibility of this. Of course, speaking about the inequalities, they'll always be there, but healthcare is supposed to be a basic right, which has turned to be quite a luxury in Southern Africa.
Well, to distinguish between the situation in Southern Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa and South Africa, South Africa is capable of achieving universal health coverage. It already does so to a large extent. And I think the first issue is to distinguish between national health insurance and universal health coverage. National health insurance is just one proposal for a version of universal health coverage. We already have a version that's in place. So coverage is defined in two ways. One is that for people with inadequate incomes, you require essentially government to subsidize people's access to health care. For people with adequate incomes in a country that can't afford to cover everybody using the tax system, using general tax revenue, you create a framework in which people can access that cover using insurance. So universal health coverage is well understood to involve two issues. One is subsidized coverage, and the other is the ability to have prepaid coverage. In other words, you access some form of protected insurance for healthcare, and so that you don't face very steep point of service costs that can become an access barrier even to people with adequate incomes. So in South Africa we have, and you would detect problems or gaps in your universal health coverage model if you see very large out-of-pocket payments. In other words, where people are paying for healthcare outside of insurance or outside of public sector coverage. And in South Africa, we have around about the sort of 11 to 12 lowest levels of out-of-pocket expenditure as a percentage of overall health expenditure in the world. So what that shows is that from a pure coverage perspective, South Africa does very well. What it doesn't do well at is the governance of both of those systems. So in our public system, the problem has been misgovernment and corruption that has actually impacted on the quality of the service provision. And we see very big differentials in performance within the state itself, within the public health services, say, for instance, between a sort of a relatively well-governed health system in the Western Cape and the other provinces. And in the case of the private sector, we have a problem of systemic cost increases over time that the Health Market Inquiry has investigated in extensive detail, and prior committees of inquiry and processes. What has happened is that in both these sectors, government has actually failed to implement the measures that are required to actually improve the quality of our coverage. So we have not had the governance reforms in the public sector to remove the corruption, and we haven't had the recommendations that have been made in numerous committees of inquiry, the most recent being the 2019 Health Market Inquiry, to address the systemic cost increases in the private sector. And in both systems, the solutions are well known and well understood. And that would be a very, very sustainable universal coverage framework for South Africa. NHI is a proposal that just trashes our existing health systems, our provincial health system and our private health system, and creates a third health system that hasn't existed in South Africa before, and for which there are no institutions that have evolved over time. And so it is a very disruptive proposal that seeks to centralize the purchasing of healthcare, which is incredibly dangerous and not how you actually run health systems around the world. So the NHI proposals are not a sustainable universal coverage model in South Africa. That's part of the debate. The issue is why are we not implementing the kind of reforms that are necessary to stabilize the systems we do have? And it's important to note that universal health coverage is possible if you combine the people with adequate incomes contributing toward their own health coverage, which is what happens in medical schemes. They're not using taxpayers' money. They're using their own money, but they're accessing an insurance pool which prevents them from experiencing catastrophic health expenses at point of service. Public sector is highly subsidized, but there's no way that we can increase taxes and realize the revenues required to cover the entire population through the government systems. And that's the issue. Universal health coverage in developing countries is invariably a multi-pronged strategy involving both contributions to private insurance and public sector coverage and subsidized coverage. We have that. We have the assets in place and potentially the institutions in place for that to work very well. But that's what universal health coverage is. And we basically are doing quite well in some respects, but we are on shaky ground when it comes to the quality of the services we're doing, providing, and the sustainability of the private system in terms of costs over time. It's not immediate collapse or anything, but it's a slow incremental problem that prevents people from increasing the number of people who can access contributory health coverage.
Well, sustainability is, the question of this particular conversation, because even if these systems were implemented across the continent in South Africa, would they be sustainable, even looking at how unsustainable the current healthcare systems have been because of those inequalities, those systematic inequalities that still, are rife within these systems, corruption also being one of them. There are a lot of issues to look at. If you could all just stay on the line, we need to go to our news break, and then we can come back and break it down a little bit more. It's great that we've heard all your opening statements and how you feel generally about universal health coverage, but let's get into the intricacies of it. Why is it feasible? Why is it not? And how do we make it, a system that allows the people of the country, the people of the continent, to have the access to healthcare that is necessary and is part of their human rights? It's 9:30 Central Africa time. Let's get our latest sports news.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
And a very good morning from the sports desk. I am Musibudi Makura with the latest sports news at the Sawa. We'll start with basketball news. So made by basketball captain Lebesa Selepe is confident that they can make a huge impression as they make their debut in the BAL tournament in Rwanda representing South Africa. So the Blue Soldiers at Johannesburg-based Basketball Africa League Club replacing Cape Town Tigers, who have been familiar representatives for South Africa Africa in the Basketball Africa League over the years. Now, with the Kigali conference now fully underway, Selepe says they have come with the winning mentality to this conference.
The mindset is to win, to just set the tone for the rest of the 10 days, a tone of preparation, a tone of just playing the basketball that we would like to go out there and play. That's good defense, that's execution on offense, not letting the stage get to us. We all know and accept that this is a very high stage of basketball, but we just want to go out there and execute one possession at a time.
On to football news now. Amajita head coach Raymond Mdaga says the DStv Diski Challenge has played a significant role to the South African national under-20 team's success, culminating in last night's victory as the newly crowned Africa Cup of Nations champions. Now, Mdaga says, speaking after the match yesterday in the post-match conference after Amajita beat Morocco 1-0 in the AFCON final played at the 30 June Stadium in Cairo, Egypt. Now, the core of this team, including the goal scorer Khumole Mokegana, plays in the DDC, and Mdaga says this league has played a critical role in their success.
Again, salute the DDC because it made it easy for us to be able to see players weekend over weekend going to different places and seeing them, always also following them because the country is so big. If it wasn't the DDC, you wouldn't be able to see them. You couldn't drive, maybe make sure that you make follow-ups or you go see them, but through the DDC we're able to do that. And
Amajita has made history, of course, by becoming the first South African men's team at the junior level to be crowned African champions. This victory also serves as sweet revenge against Morocco, who had defeated Benny McCarthy's team 1-0 in the final back in 1997. Mdaga attributes this success in this game and throughout the tournament to a disciplined approach.
Well done to the boys. They've done themselves good, but we'll always want to thank everybody, the players, the technical team, starting from the first games in the group stages. You can even see the margins of the results. It's 1-0, 1-0, but thanks God, we were able to go through all the journey until we came to the final and we ended up winning the final. What a difficult game, honestly.
On to athletics news now. South African sprint star Akane Simbine continued his 100-meter dominance, picking up another win at the Atlanta City Games in the USA. The South African clocked a wind-aided 9.86 seconds for the win. He started a bit slow, but hit his strides at the 50-meter mark, well ahead of Nigerian Ododi Onzu, who was in second and finished in second place in a time of 10.05 seconds. Simbine's 9.90 seconds from the Botswana Golden Grand Prix in April remains as the official world lead for 2025. Simbine was expecting the reigning Olympic champion Noah Lyles to be lining up alongside him, but the American withdrew from the race due to a tight ankle that has impacted him in the last 2 weeks. The 31-year-old sprinter has won both the 100-meter Diamond League events this season alone and a medal at the World Indoor Championships earlier on in the year, and also anchored Team South Africa to gold in the 4x100-meter relay event out in China just 2 weeks ago. And finally, in Formula One news, Max Verstappen has surged to an impressive and did so victory in the second victory of the season at the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix, the Dutchman having snatched P1 at the start before holding his position ahead of the McLaren pair in an eventful afternoon that featured a virtual safety car as well as full safety car phases. Now, the race got underway in an exciting fashion as pole sitter Oscar Piastri initially launched well off the line, only for Verstappen to make a stunning overtake, resulting in the world champion going on to build a sizable lead in the laps that followed. Piastri then joined a number of drivers who made an early pit stop, as questions also persisted over whether a one-stop or two-stop strategy was the way forward, with around half of the field remaining out following an early flurry of action in the pits for the other half. The picture was also turned on its head when a virtual safety car was caught up on lap 29 after Esteban Ocon had pulled onto the grass in the Haas car. But there was also more drama to come later on when a safety car was deployed owing to Kimi Antonelli pulling off the track on lap 46 due to an issue with his Mercedes. And with that, it's a wrap from the sports desk at the Sawa. For any sports stories you would like to share with us, our email address is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or give us a call, +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Zilipendwa na Abedi Jean de la Croix.
Uzuri na ukubwa wa kazi yako unatokana na nini?
Kwanza kabisa ni kujifunza vitu mbalimbali, lakini pia kuvaa uhalisia wa jamii kile inachopitia, kujifunza vitu vipya, lakini pia kufanya mazoezi na kumshirikisha Mungu katika career yangu ya muziki.
Bila shaka. Je, management na wadhamini vile vile wana nafasi kubwa au wana nafasi gani katika mafanikio yako kikazi?
Niseme labda wana asilimia 99 katika mafanikio ya muziki wangu, management au mabosi wangu.
Umewahi pia kupokea salamu za pongezi au ukosoaji kuhusiana na muziki wako?
Nilishapokea nyingi sana kutoka sehemu mbalimbali, DRC, Tanzania na East Africa nzima kwa jumla.
Tuzungumzie kuhusu ukosoaji sasa. Unajisikia pale unapokosolewa?
Najisikia vizuri sana. Unajua usipokosolewa ina maana wewe sio binadamu wa kawaida, kwa sababu asiyekosolewa pekee ni Mungu.
Zilipendwa kila Jumamosi kuanzia saa 12 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati hadi saa 1 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati.
Thank you for that sports update. We keep things moving with our latest business news.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Good morning. South Africa's biggest mobile operator, Vodacom, reported a marginal rise in annual earnings on a stronger second half performance, but gains were capped by significant currency volatility. Vodacom, majority owned by UK-based Vodafone, said headline earnings per share rose by 1.3% to 857 South African cents in the year ended March 31 from 846 cents a year earlier. CEO of Vodacom, Shamir Yusuf, given significant currency volatility, he was impressed with the strong finish the group produced in the last 6 months, supporting the confidence communicated in November last year that the organization is poised for a strong second half performance. The Economic Freedom Fighters Party in South Africa this morning is holding what it's calling a VAT Victory March in the capital, Pretoria. The march is set to begin at the Union Buildings, from where EFF members will proceed to the offices of National Treasury. The march comes 2 days before Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana tables the 2025 budget in Cape Town. Sibahle Muta reports.
The party's victory march comes after what the EFF has termed as a successful defeat of the VAT increase in Parliament and in court. Last month, the Western Cape High Court suspended the 0.5 percentage point VAT increase in an application brought by the EFF and Democratic Alliance. The EFF has maintained that Parliament's adoption of the fiscal policy framework was unlawful. Streets that will be affected by this morning's march include Stanza Bubape, Madiba, Paul Kruger, and Lillian Ngoyi.
The South African Post Office has signed an agreement with the Unemployment Insurance Fund for 381 million rand. The fund aims to safeguard almost 6,000 jobs and aid the post office's revival through a strategic partnership. The Minister of Employment and Labour, Noma Nkosazana Meth, yesterday said the UIF, through the Temporary Employee Relief Scheme, TERS, will inject the fund into SAPO over a 6-month period. TERS coordinator at the UIF, Rachel Taukobong.
This is only for salaries, and we are saying that as we save the post office their payroll funds, the 381 million that they would have ordinarily paid to the employees will be used elsewhere in terms of their turnaround strategy that they have implemented. So the post office will on a monthly basis be measured on the implementation of that turnaround strategy as well, including the verification that the money is paid to the employees.
India's third largest telecom company, Vodafone Idea, has gone to India's Supreme Court to challenge the government's rejection of a request by the debt-saddled company to waive more than $5 billion that it owes the government. The company requested a waiver on interest and penalties it owes on $9.7 billion in dues on April 29, saying its survival was at risk. However, India's Communications Ministry has rejected the request and says it cannot be considered. The company has struggled to pay outstanding spectrum and revenue sharing dues since a landmark 2019 Supreme Court order that widened the scope of revenues on which the dues are assessed. Oil prices have slipped today, weighed down by Moody's downgrade of the United States sovereign credit rating and official data that showed a slowdown in the pace of China's industrial output and retail sales. Brent crude futures have edged down 51 cents or 0.8% to $64.90 a barrel this morning. Analysts say Moody's downgrade raises questions about the outlook for the U.S. economy, while China's data points to a bumpy road ahead for any economic recovery. Taking a look at our financial indicators this morning, $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,599 naira 70. In Botswana, it's at 13 pula 40. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 58. And in Zambia, it's at 26 kwacha 69. Moving on to the BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 reals 66. Russia, 80 rubles 84. In India, it's at 85 rupees 56. China, 7 yuan 20. And South Africa, $1 is trading at 18 rand 2 cents. $1 is trading at 75 pence to the British pound and 89 to the euro. Looking at commodities this morning, gold is trading at $3,225, platinum at $991 per ounce, while Brent crude oil is at $65.26 a barrel. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I'm Buntle Hedbush.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. 9 to 12 midday Central African Time. On the Move with Palesa and Benjamin Mushatama.
Thank you so much, Bontle Hedbush, for that business update. We're still going to continue with the African Viewer debate on a hot topic here on the African continent and the world over. Today we're speaking about the fiscal and institutional feasibility of universal health coverage in Southern Africa. Continuing this conversation with us is Dr. Mvuyisi Mzukwa, South African Medical Association Chairperson, Katleho Mutudi, Managing Director of the Board of Healthcare Funders, as well as Professor Alex van den Heerwe, Adjunct Professor and Chairperson of Social Security Systems Administration and Management Studies at the University of the Witwatersrand. As we continue, we know that most African countries have integrated universal healthcare as a goal in their national health strategies, yet the progress in translating these commitments into expanded domestic resources for health and effective development have rather been slow. I'm going to come back to you, Katleho, on this one. Essentially, it feels like we speak about universal health coverage as ethically correct. Morally, it's something that is necessary, but it seems like institutionally the viability of it is a little bit shaky. As you heard now, the reflections of Professor van den Heerwe as well as Dr. Mvuyisi Mzukwa. What do you think about this?
Yeah, I think the progress can be assessed. I think Dr. Mzukwa spoke about the framework that is proposed by the WHO, and he referred to the 6 elements. If you check all those, you will realize where our problems lie, and usually around the first pillar, the pillar of leadership and governance. If you do not have the right people in place who are able to guide the process, who are able to behave ethically, then everything else falls apart. In fact, this was also reported by the WHO and World Bank in several reports when they assessed progress for SADC, that stewardship is an issue. Closer to home, Prof mentioned the health market inquiry. One of the comments from the Competition Commission was the lack of or poor stewardship by the department. So when you look at what is possible, you have to have an all-encompassing view, starting with that, and then also the other elements that you also mentioned in your intro around workforce planning and retention, issues around infrastructure, etc. And they talk to all those elements. And those are the issues that we need to deal with to make sure that the healthcare that we provide is actually adequate and relevant.
Well, let's come to you, Dr. Mzukwa. I mean, Professor van der Jager highlighted some important issues when it comes to the expense, the fact that we can't tax enough for a coverage for everyone in terms of that inclusion in the National Health Insurance Plan. What's your take on that? Because I think it's feasible. If you have a dilapidated infrastructural situation, if there's no accountability when it comes to the corruption in the health sector, then how do you fund this big project?
A correction in the assessment that was made earlier on, that I agree with the NHI. I think the mistake is that we are confusing the universal health coverage and the NHI.
Sure.
Universal health coverage is the ultimate goal. It's where we want to be. And the NHI is a vehicle that South Africa is using to reach to that goal. So I think we needed to clarify that, because we've taken government to court regarding the clarity of the NHI.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Coming to the point that you are raising now, yes, if you look at the NHI in South Africa, it only talks about just financing model. It's a financing model that purchases services. It is not dealing with other important pillars as outlined by Dr. Katlego Motuli in terms of the health workforce. We know that in that regard we've got a serious problem. But the greatest problem is, as alluded to by Dr. Mutuli, is the issue that was pointed out by our own institutions within the country, like the Academy of Science of South Africa, ASEF. In their report, they specifically, I think it was in 2023, October, if I'm not mistaken, they released a report that speaks on the feasibility of NHI versus leadership and governance. And they said if South Africa is not working on the issue of leadership and governance, they must forget about NHI, because that's what the problem is. Because if you do not have a good stewardship at that level, how do you expect that these billions of rands that will be pooled will be protected and will be distributed accordingly and efficiently? So those are the issues that were raised. But the other issue, that makes feasibility a problem, is the issue of recruitment and retention of the health workforce. You will know that even now we're dealing with such issues. If you look, for example, in South Africa, in Gauteng and other provinces like the Eastern Cape, we're dealing with the issue of retention, talking about committed overtime and how government willy-nilly changes, conditions of service and all these things. And these are push factors that makes the working environment uncomfortable for a health workforce. You will know the death of the intern, Dr. Mazwi, in KwaZulu-Natal. Those are the issues that we're talking about, that the environment is psychologically not safe, for health workforce. So it becomes a huge problem.
Okay.
And yes, there are other issues that you could talk about. For example, the issue of shortages of medicines. We know if we could have some collaboration to a certain extent in terms of the issue of medicines, access to essential medicines. if we could have that, we would obviously have collective procurement. That could reduce the issue of stockouts that we're experiencing at the moment. And that could assist, in terms of the benefits that the public would be exposed to. But the problem is that the feasibility around that, we would think that it's moderate, because if you look at the regional supply chains that are possible, and the funding and the problems, the management barriers, there's poor management on that side, and hence then you've got a sustainability problem, at the long run.
Okay, let me wrap it up with you, Professor De Nierver. It seems like there's complementary views on this one, and to a large extent, you guys are complementing each other in terms of the understanding of how we see universal health coverage and its distinction to the National Health Insurance Plan. What would your closing feature be for this conversation, Prof?
So the first thing to understand is that we can't have universal coverage in any developing country which involves only a tax-funded system. We have to combine it with the what can be referred to as the insurance or contributory systems. And governments need to invest in the institutions that actually can run those particular systems well. If you don't invest properly, you have that problem of governance and leadership that's referred to. Our institutions in South Africa and in many places in Africa are contaminated by political appointments. And unless you separate out what the politicians are permitted to do and what people and the corporate governance designs of the people running the systems, you're going to have persistent problems of leadership and stewardship, because people basically can take advantage of weaknesses in the governance framework in order to enrich themselves. That's what we have in South Africa, and it's harmed our institutions, the integrity of the institutions, and how much we get. What we're able to purchase for the amount of money we have. This will be all the way through Africa as well. So that's an important investment, is to change the institutional structures and make sure that we've got institutions to run the private sector, institutions to run the public sector. And if we have the wrong institutions and the wrong corporate governance designs, it's very difficult to make such complex systems work well.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much for your interesting viewpoints, and I think it is an overarching conversation which looks at the multiple elements of the challenges of the National Health Insurance Plan, but also it is clarifying our concepts of universal health coverage. Thank you to Dr. Mbuyisi Mzukwa, South African Medical Association Chairperson. Thank you as well to Dr. Katleho Mutudi. Thank you, Dr. Mzukwa, for inserting the position of Dr. Mutudi. Apologies, Dr. Mutudi, for not including your title as we've included the titles of our other guests. That's Managing Director of the Board of Healthcare Funders, Katleho Mutudi. Also, we have Professor Alex van der Järve, who's the Adjunct Prof and Chairperson of Social Security Systems Administration and Management Studies at the University of Witwatersrand. A difficult one. I think that was a learning curve, that conversation, more than it was a debate, because it seems like most of our guests complement each other's views in their understanding, giving different side angles of how they are seeing this particular take. Do you think we can achieve universal health coverage? Give us your thoughts on our WhatsApp number, +276 406 9126. But also you can give us your commentary on our live feed on Facebook as well as on YouTube.
Benjamin Mushatama and Palesa on the move. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens, and Channel Africa makes sure of it. For business, for culture, for Africa. Partner with Channel Africa, because Africa's voice is the future. Africa is a story, a living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other. Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent, African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices: English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens, and Channel Africa makes sure of it. For business, for culture, for Africa, partner with Channel Africa, because Africa's voice is the future. Africa is a story, a living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other. Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent, African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices: English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act.
Ira Star also coming through on that one, being featured on that one. It's 9:58 Central Africa time. What do you think about universal healthcare? Some of these conversations sometimes feel like there's a lot of talk and not enough action. Yes, the African continent wants its people to have universal health coverage. They want their people to have access to healthcare. But there's so many systematic defaults that have happened over many, many years that I feel still needs to be fixed before we actually move on to a new era.
But how long do we blame coloniality? How long do we blame the past and the histories of the continent? Where's the leadership right now when it comes to making sure that the needs of the African peoples are met? That's the big question that we should ask. Is the leadership doing exactly what the people want on the ground? Are we prioritizing the right things in the right way? Are we maximizing the resources that we have on the African continent to really fulfill the needs of what's happening on the ground? There's a huge population dynamic here in Africa, and there are many needs on the African continent. Our economies are constrained, and it seems as years go by, we become more and more challenged in many African countries.
Absolutely. Well, you can be a part of those conversations by joining our live stream. On Facebook, we are Channel Africa. On X, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok, we are at Channel Africa 1. So let's engage over there and enjoy the conversations. It's 10 a.m. Central Africa time. Moving into the second hour, let's get our latest news.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Well, thank you, Palesa. Looking at your top stories, Libyan Prime Minister says eliminating militias is an ongoing project, and Israel ready to allow a limited amount of food into Gaza. Your latest news, greetings to our listeners. Libyan Prime Minister Abdul Hamid al-Debaiba has said eliminating militias is an ongoing project. This is following a ceasefire after deadly clashes last week remained in place. Debaiba is the country's internationally recognized leader in the West, based in Tripoli. After Debaiba on Tuesday ordered the armed groups to be dismantled, Tripoli was rocked by its fiercest clashes in years between two armed groups. The government announced a ceasefire on Wednesday. This followed Monday's killing of major militia chief Abdul Ghani Kirkli, widely known as Ganiwa, and the sudden defeat of his stabilization support apparatus group by factions aligned with Debaiba. On Friday, at least 3 ministers resigned in sympathy with hundreds of protesters who took to the streets calling for Debaiba's ouster. The National Prosecuting Authority says it will apply for the extradition of Nigerian televangelist Timothy Omotoso should its appeal of his acquittal succeed. The NPA has confirmed that it will proceed with the appeal. Omotoso returned to his country of origin yesterday. He voluntarily opted to be deported after immigration authorities arrested him in East London in the Eastern Cape province earlier this month. The NPA says the law does not require active participation or presence of an accused person during a court's hearing of an appeal. Meanwhile, South Africa's Democratic Alliance Party says a lack of skills and experience in the National Prosecuting Authority is seriously hampering its ability to bring successful prosecutions. That's after the High Court in Gqeberha in the Eastern Cape province acquitted Nigerian televangelist Timothy Omotoso and 2 others last month. The trio faced over 30 charges, including rape, human trafficking, and racketeering. The spokesperson on Justice and Constitutional Development, Advocate Glenys Breitenbach.
One of the reasons is that as soon as people become skilled, experienced, they get pushed by private enterprise because they can pay so much more. But the fact of the matter is that prosecuting is a job that you learn on the job. You can't learn it at university. It doesn't matter how well qualified you are. Prosecuting is a job that you learn by doing it. And the people who have had all that expertise are now retiring. And those skills are not being retained in any formal fashion. And the young prosecutors have nobody to learn from. So there's a lack of skills, there's a lack of experience, there's a lack of exposure. And this is starting to show in the way that big matters are being handled.
The Kenya Wildlife Service and Lewa Conservancy over the weekend completed a week-long ear-notching operation aimed at better tracking and protecting the region's growing rhino population. The operation, involving helicopter tracking and ground teams, saw specialists measure horn and monitor oxygen levels. The Lewa Borana ecosystem now hosts more than 300 rhinos, with numbers steadily climbing. Lastly, Israel says it is ready to allow a limited amount of food into Gaza, ending a 10-week blockade that's brought the territory to the brink of famine. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said a starvation crisis would jeopardize a renewed military offensive against Hamas. The announcement comes after pressure from the U.S. Extensive Israeli ground operations had begun across Gaza and deadly airstrikes continued overnight. The BBC's Yolanda Nell.
With global experts warning of famine, Israel's continuing blockade of Gaza, which it said was to put pressure on Hamas, has caused an international outcry. While Israel insists it's sticking to its controversial plans for a new aid system, for now, the UN, which has supplies piled up at Gaza's crossings, has confirmed that it's been approached about resuming deliveries. Israel's military is continuing its most extensive ground operations since ending a ceasefire 2 months ago.
Now recapping on your top stories, Libyan Prime Minister Abdul Hamid al-Debaiba has said eliminating militias is an ongoing project in the country. This is following a ceasefire after deadly clashes last week remained in place. Now, for any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us +27 11 714 4459. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Ntsinzi.
SABC News. African perspective. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens, and Channel Africa makes sure of it. For business, for culture, for Africa.
Yours. I hope you've had a great start to the week, the working week that is. We've certainly had a great start, starting off with a debate conversation on the African View. You can continue and be a part of those conversations on all our social media platforms and, of course, by joining our live stream. But there's so many ways to tune in and tap into African perspective on our website www.channelafrica.co.za. You can find us on our audio bouquets at DSTV channel 802 and OpenView HD channel 628, and of course the SABC Plus app, another great way to tap into Channel Africa under the radio section. What does the word family mean to you? And I know there's been somewhat of an evolution of how we view the family, but is it an evolution or is it a backtrack on how we needed actually to implement the current family structure because of the issues that we're facing in what was known as the nuclear family? So what does the word family mean to you? What is a family? Who should be in a family? And how do you maintain the stability of a family? And we're not just looking at this from the micro perspective, being you and your own family members, but in the macro perspective, how can Africans keep the family structure stable? And how does that impact our societies? How does that even impact our economy and our livelihood? So we're going to go into that conversation in this hour of the show, looking at the stability of the family structure, but also what needs to be done on an individual level, inside the family, on a community level, and even on a policy level in trying to sustain the African family. We'll be unpacking that in this hour of the show, and we'll be helping to speak about the importance of promoting family well-being and family stability. Judith Muila is the president and founder of Families Are Nations, a family building intervention which provides family council services aimed at strengthening family structures. We'll be also joined by Errol Naidu, the founder and director at Family Policy Institute, to help unpack this. Just last week, Thursday, it was International Day of Families, and this is quite important to unpack.
Hey, it's a Monday, remember, and we always have our fitness and nutrition feature. We love that one. Our team is back in the gym, so we think we are encouraged by this particular feature, and I hope that you are as well. This one is an interesting conversation. There's a trend that's taken over our kitchen, our lunch boxes, and TikTok feeds, and this one is called the meal prep culture. Once the secret weapon of bodybuilders and fitness fanatics, meal prepping has gone mainstream. So many people are doing this. It's to save time. People are doing it for different reasons, for eating healthier. And one of the most important areas of meal prep culture is actually budgeting a little bit better. So we're going to be speaking to Obakeng Makapane, fitness expert and personal trainer. She goes by the name of Fit Obi. So we're looking forward to having that chat. Is meal prepping a modern day life hack or just another performance of wellness culture? What's your take on that? Do you prep your meals every single day for work, maybe for lunch? Especially when you think about having a big family, meal preps always work a little bit better. How do you go about it? Let us know on our WhatsApp number, +2763 406 9126. Remember, engage with us on our socials. At Channel Africa 1 is the magic phrase. At Channel Africa 1, remember, it is the numeric number 1 after the phrase Channel Africa. And you can find us on all social media platforms. TikTok, you can find us on Instagram, you can find us on X as well, and as Facebook. So don't be shy, become part of the Channel Africa family on all those wonderful platforms. And don't forget as well, our YouTube page is under that wonderful phrase, Channel Africa 1. At Channel Africa 1, you can find us and you can subscribe on that YouTube page. Looking forward to this one, the importance of families, sustainable families. How do we bring stronger families here on the African continent? That's what's coming up.
África. Conhece o Ntivani?
Claro que sou eu.
Ntivani é o amante da música de corpo e alma.
Eu amo música africana.
Ele aprecia todos os tipos de melodias e passa os seus dias a ouvir a Channel África.
Ok.
Adivinha só, a Channel África quer ajudar o Ntivani e os amantes da música em todo o lado a descobrir ainda mais música incrível. Por isso, a Channel África está a convocar artistas africanos a submeterem as suas músicas. Músicos, lembrem-se de nos dar todas as informações relevantes no music@channelafrica.co.za. As submissões são a vossa oportunidade de ser ouvidos, mas não garantem inclusão na lista. Todas as submissões serão cuidadosamente analisadas para verificar se cumprem os requisitos da nossa estação. Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
My name is Neto, NETO Chamani. Osiyatiko, Nengezimo, Mkhanju, Phandle kunjani moyani. Voko tendele. Africa at Play, asiteleli siyashaya. Africa's velvet voice is in the house. Africa at Play is a place to be, where we speak all things sport and music, from the African continent to the rest of the world. We speak to your bundles of joy in sport, 12-year-olds and below, teenagers in sport. And we speak to elite athletes, administrators, coaches, and all the behind-the-scenes stakeholders of sport and music. Africa at Play, asiteleli siyashaya. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah.
Benjamin Mushatama and Palesa on the move.
It's 12 minutes past 10 Central Africa times, the second hour of On the Move right here on Channel Africa. You know, the word family is not what it used to be. And I feel like there is sort of a head in the cloud notion when it comes to what we perceive to be a family here in the African continent and in fact the world over. You know, what people would think of a family just generally is something that we were taught as a society, is that a nuclear family would consist of two parents and their children. And although these do exist on the African continent, they're not the dominant family structure. And in fact, the most prevalent family structure on the African continent is the extended family, where multiple generations or other relatives live together. In fact, for example, here in South Africa, research indicates that only a quarter of children live in nuclear families, with a significant majority of around 62% living in extended family arrangements. So that obviously says that what we have thought of the family to be is not exactly what exists here on the African continent, and these structures continue to take on new forms each and every year, or each and every decade. And as we evolve, the family structure is evolving as well. And we're looking at that today. We're unpacking the importance of promoting family well-being and family stability, simply because it's not just about the few people who exist within a particular family, but family is very important for societal cohesion, for community cohesion, but also for economic security. We're unpacking this today with Errol Naidu, the founder and director at Family Policy Institute. We'll also bring in a little bit later on Judith Muila, the president and founder of Families Are Nations, which is a family building intervention that provides family counseling services aimed at strengthening family structures. Errol, I'm going to come to you. Thank you so much for your time and thank you for joining us this morning. The family, what is it? Can we even just say something is a family? Because this looks very different for different people.
Yeah, well, the family, if you look at research, if you go back thousands of years, the family consists of a mother, a father, and children. That is the basic building blocks of any and every society. But obviously it starts with a marriage, and we go back to creation. God created a man, and then he created a woman, and he brought them together in marriage. And the purpose of the man and woman was marriage and the perpetuation of human civilization. So God commanded them to go forth and multiply, to have children, create families, and those families then became the basic building blocks of society, which is what it is even up till today. And research from even secular organizations attest to the fact that the family, when the family is intact, the two-parent biological family is intact, it is the strength of nations. And strong families build strong societies. It's not just a cliche or a saying. There's mountains of research now that prove that children are born into a family because of a man and a woman coming together and making those children. As a result, all children need a mother and a father for their well-being, emotional well-being, their psychological well-being, for their stability. And stable, loving homes, research again shows, produces the best outcomes for children. When children grow up in a home with both mom and dad that are active and involved in their lives, they perform well on every metric possible, whether that is emotionally, academically, in every metric, they perform well. And then if you look at the unfortunate circumstances of children that are raised in dysfunctional families, and especially fatherless homes, the research shows it is devastating. It is devastating to children. It is devastating to society. And if you look at South African society, for an example, we have the highest rates of social welfare in the world today. Almost half our population is 100% dependent on social welfare from government. And what's the reason for that? Broken and dysfunctional families, fatherless homes. And when families break down and are dysfunctional, that family unit that is supposed to be self-subsistent, it now depends on government welfare to exist. Children, so many children, if they come out of broken homes, there's no father figure. The mama has to go on welfare, and they depend on welfare budgets and grants. And so that is the, in a nutshell, is the situation South Africa finds itself in. And then if you look at the opposite of that, research indicates that when families are stable and intact, with a dad in the home, there's a reduction of poverty, number one.
Yeah.
There's a reduction of crime and violence and social ills, because you can trace all of the social ills we grapple with in South Africa is traced back to the breakdown of the family.
Well, Errol, let me stop you there for a bit, because I want us to go a little bit deeper into this conversation. It's great, and that's why in my opening I said what we think of as a family and what we are taught to be a family is what you've described, the nuclear family structure. But that has also not existed, not just in South Africa, but on the African continent at large now for a very, very long time. It is what the minority of families look like, with extended family structures being what the majority looks like, and of course, as you mentioned, fatherless households. So is there a need for us to redefine and find stability in what we see the family to be, and not what we imagine what we want it to be? Because we do imagine it to be nuclear. We want it to be nuclear. It has perfect examples. The research says, children thrive in those environments. But that's not what we have. And we need to actually start and look at the family with what we have to engage with in today's society. So I want you to think about that a little bit while we go on a break, because we do need to take a short break. And as we come back, maybe we can try and find that stability in today, in what the family looks like today, instead of, obviously just thinking about what the nuclear family should have been and how people can thrive there. How can we thrive today with what we see the family to be and to exist for a very long time now? It's 20 minutes past 10 Central Africa time. I want to find out from you, what does family mean to you? And what does that word mean to you? What would you like your family to look like? What does your family currently look like? And are those two things in sync? We'll continue this conversation after the break.
Annie Kalonji sur Channel Africa.
Nous étions en train de savourer la chanson Démocratie.
Démocratie.
Ça veut dire quoi?
Démocratie, déjà, ça dérive de démocratie, qui est le régime dans lequel nous sommes, dans notre pays. Mais je plutôt pensais que nous sommes plutôt dans une démocratie.
Pourquoi?
Où il y a eu une cruauté tellement une méchanceté des dirigeants envers la population. En fait, dans cette chanson, je suis en train de blâmer tout le monde. Je blâme et les dirigeants, qui pour moi sont des démocrates.
Oh, je suis maintenant en train de comprendre. Donc, démocratie. Oh!
Annie Kalonji, tous les dimanches sur Mix Vibration.
9 to 12 midday, Central African Time. On the Move with Palesa and Benjamin Mushatama.
What a family looks like on the African continent is completely different to some parts of the world. We know that in many households, the key primary caregiver is a child, typically an older child. There is at times no available adult caregivers, and at times you see in many communities led by single mothers, and that's the thing that we're talking today about, that structure of stable family. And we actually go back to creating that stable family. That also includes, of course, the dynamic of extended families, as we know that our families look dynamic here on the African continent. Errol Naidu is joining us, founder and director at Family Policy Institute. Errol, you really spoke about a traditional family. However, there are many challenges on the African continent when it comes to families and how they look like. I gave you a few examples in that intro, child-headed households. You also spoke of single mothers as well, dominating the family structure. What's your take in terms of that particular challenge? Because Palesa did highlight something very important, that as much as we can think of the traditional family framework, that's not what we see on the ground.
Yeah, and so it's not a case of kind of, we have what we have in Africa or in South Africa, single-parent homes being the majority, fatherless homes. And so we've got to adapt to that. I don't think we should adapt to something that is dysfunctional and not helping us as a society. What we must try to do is get back to the ideal of the family. We must teach and train people that to look after their marriages, to protect and look after their marriages, to keep their families intact. There should be a huge move or initiative in South Africa in particular that involves government and the church and religious organizations and the media and academic institutions working in partnership to get this message out that family breakdown is devastating, catastrophic to every single person in the country. It affects everybody, even those people that are intact families.
Errol, can I challenge that to a large degree, because I think it is kind of challenging just one view of what a family looks like in many environments. I don't think there's a consideration of the other circumstances, and I think that's a little bit unfair. And I know that you are biased towards your faith and your religion, but why are you not considering these other frameworks that are really real in many societies and communities? They exist. And if I was someone who was actually leading a parentless environment and household, and I was listening to you, I would be actually hurt by some of the views that you're highlighting there.
Yeah, I think that perhaps you misunderstanding me. I'm not acknowledging. I know the environment in South Africa. I've seen the research that only 33% of children live with both biological families. I know the stats on fatherless homes, and I also know the consequences of it. And so I'm not acknowledging. I know it exists, but I'm not saying but I'm saying that is not the ideal.
We're both saying it's not the ideal. We're both saying it's not the ideal.
No, wait, let me finish.
Yeah, sure.
We must work toward training and teaching people that the problems that we are facing in our country today. For example, 8 million children suffering from malnutrition so that their growth is stunted. Why? Because they come out of poor, broken, and dysfunctional families. Right? It's harming children and it's devastating society because our welfare budgets are in the hundreds of billions. And the World Bank and the IMF and many institutions are warning South Africa, this is unsustainable. You cannot continue like this. Which means that we're facing a catastrophe. And we've got to wake up and say, what do we do to change this, to turn this around? So having said that, now we can acknowledge that there are, the majority of families in South Africa are single-parent families. And we have millions of fatherless homes as well. But what are the consequences of it? So we recognize that. And we say, what do we do to try to strengthen and support those families?
Okay, what do we do? I mean, let's go to that dynamic, because I think just considering one type of family is not a progressive way of looking at stable families, because the stability...
it's a progressive way of looking at this in a place. What you've got to do...
But do you know what I mean by progressive, Errol?
I do.
Sure.
I do.
Go
I know
ahead.
what you mean.
Okay.
And so you've got to look at the reality of what is happening in South Africa. Whether you want to put labels on it, progressive this and progressive that is not the issue. The issue is what is happening in South Africa. What is the reality on the ground? And the reality on the ground is massive poverty and dysfunctionality as a result of family breakdown, of people not working to keep their families intact. That is the reality. And if we help people and educate them, help them understand what are the consequences, the real consequences of family breakdown, broken marriages, and how it affects children, family dysfunction, what it does to a society, that everybody pays for it, because we have the highest welfare budgets. They try to put up VAT, our government. They need to increase tax to keep this thing going. Why? Because of the result of our dysfunctional society. So we must all... There's almost like South Africa must stop, reset, and take a breather and say, what is happening in our country? Why are there so many divorces and marriage breakdowns and out-of-wedlock children? Why is there so many teenage pregnancies? We have the highest teenage pregnancies in the world. There's children having children from 10 years old and 11 years old and 12 years old and 13 years old, having babies and then applying for child welfare grants. Why is that happening? And if you look at the stats, you see that all of those children come out of broken homes or fatherless homes. So it's devastating. So if you say, I'm progressive, and I just look at this and it's a reality is happening, how are we going to manage it? The answer is you can't manage it. You cannot manage it. What our government is trying to do is throw money at it. Taxpayer money at it. And the more they throw money at it, the worse it gets. Why? Because they're not looking at solutions. Our government has adopted a foreign devised sexual rights ideology. And that is fueling the flame.
Okay. I'm going to stop you there, Errol, because I think we're going on a tangent. But I do get your point, absolutely. There are a lot of positive aspects in keeping the family nuclear. However, we are not in that current reality in South Africa and on the African continent at large. And there needs to be a lot of groundwork, but we also need to deal with the issues that we have at hand. So it feels like essentially you're on one side, but there has to be a two-sided strategy, meaning one strategy that can re-promote the nuclear family, understanding the benefits as you've spoken of, but also the other side of the strategy that has to deal with the current impact of what the family structure looks like and try its best to make sure that people are healthy, people are growing, and we can thrive as a society. Do you think that is a better way to look at this? I'm going to leave it there. We actually have run out of time, but we do appreciate you for speaking out on this and really highlighting the importance of the nuclear family and its understanding on its benefits in our society and how we should bring back some of those benefits into the society. It's going to take a lot of work and a lot of time, but I know there are people like yourself who are, taking time to do the work in whatever small way you can in your societies and in the people that you're able to impact. We'll leave it there. Thank you so much for your time, Errol.
Thank you.
That's the founder and director at Family Policy Institute, Errol Naidu. What does the family mean to you? It's 10:30 Central Africa time. Let's bring back our latest sports news.
Sports. on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
And a very good morning from the sports desk. I am Musibudi Makura with the latest sports news at the Sawa. So an emotional Scotty Scheffler held off the rejuvenated Jon Rahm to convert his 54-hole lead into a maiden PGA US Championship title. Now, while the winning margin of about 5 strokes suggests his third major was just a mere formality, a different story threatened to unfold at Quail Hollow. Now, the world number 1 Scheffler began 3 shots ahead and 5 clear of Rahm, but it became a 2-way duel for the trophy. Now, Apache front 9 from Scheffler, along with the Spaniard Rahm's flurry of birdies around the turn, meant they shared the lead midway through the final round. However, Rahm collapsed over his final 3 holes and Scheffler coasted to a major title, and that joins his Masters victories in 2022 and 2024. The 28-year-old was in tears walking down the 18th, and his animated celebrations after sinking the winning putt demonstrated just how much this latest win means for him.
Yeah, I mean, just a lot of happiness. I think, maybe thankful as well. I mean, it was a long week. I felt like this was as hard as I've battled for a tournament in my career. I mean, this was a pretty challenging week. I mean, the first 2 days I did not swing at my best, and I was able to post a score somehow. And, outside of the last 5 holes yesterday, that's where I really kind of put myself ahead in the tournament. And, the back 9 today was pretty special as well. But yesterday, the way I finished off that round, I think it was really important for me to have a lead to play with today. And
meanwhile, Jon Rahm plans to quickly move past his painful collapse to lose the PGA Championship on Sunday, already talking with the confidence about the next month's US Open. The 2-time major winner from Spain suffered his most humbling major defeat, falling from a share of the lead and then losing to top-ranked Scotty Scheffler at Quail Hollow yesterday. So Rahm, the 2021 US Open, as well as the 2023 Masters champion, opened with a 7 par and was 5 strokes behind Scheffler, but birdied 3 of the next 4 holes and then grabbed a share of the lead, only to stumble down the stretch with a bogey and 2 double bogeys on the final 3 holes. He says he's now looking forward to going home and spending time with his children. On to tennis news now. Carlos Alcaraz ended world number 1 Jannik Sinner's 26-match winning streak with a 6-1 win in the Italian Open final. Sinner, playing in his first tournament since a 3-month doping ban, was hoping to become just the first Italian men's singles winner and the tournament since Adriano Panatta in 1976. But after edging a 10-set tiebreak, 4-time Grand Slam champion Alcaraz was a class above in the second set. Sinner had just 2 set points in the first set, but hit a backhand return wide to let the reigning French Open champion Alcaraz off the hook. Now, the 22-year-old Spaniard took full advantage with some masterful play in the second set, sealing the title with a cross-court volley at the net. On to football news now. Amajita head coach Raymond Mdaka says the DStv Diski Challenge has played a significant role in the South African national under-20 team success, culminating in last night's victory as the newly crowned African champions. Mdaka was speaking during a post-match conference after Majita beat Morocco by 1-0 in the final last night at the 30 June Stadium in Cairo, Egypt. Now, the core of this team, including goal scorer Khomole Mokegana, plays in the DDC, and Mdaka says this league has played a critical role in the success.
I salute the DDC because it made it easy for us to be able to see players weekend over weekend going to different places and seeing them, always also following them because the country is so big. If it wasn't the DDC, you wouldn't be able to see them. You couldn't drive, maybe make sure that you make follow-ups or you go see them, but through the DDC we're able to do that.
Now, Amajita also made history by becoming the first South African men's team at the junior level to be crowned champions. This victory also serves as sweet revenge against Morocco, who had defeated Benny McCarthy's team 1-0 in the final back in 1997. Mdaka attributes his success, or rather this success, in last night's game, as well as the tournament, to a disciplined approach that the team showed throughout their time in Egypt.
Well done to the boys. They've done themselves good, but we'll always want to thank everybody, the players, the technical team, starting from the first games in the group stages. You can even see the margins of the results. It's 1-0, 1-0, but thanks God, we were able to go through all the journey until we came to the final, and we ended up winning the final. What a difficult game, honestly.
Right, by the way, the team is set to touch down at the OR Tambo International Airport in the east of Johannesburg tomorrow, as they will be welcomed home following the heroic display out in Egypt at the Africa Cup of Nations tournament. It's a wrap from the sports desk at the Sawa. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, our email address is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Call us +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Es-tu préoccupé par quelque chose? Es-tu passionné par les questions qui comptent? As-tu une voix qui mérite d'être entendue? Eh bien, nous avons la plateforme parfaite pour toi. Téléphone-nous ou fais-nous un WhatsApp au +27 66 408 87 42 et nous te rappellerons. Sois dans la conversation.
Salut Channel Africa, ici Beno le Diamant Rouge et Binale Sport depuis le Cameroun, le pays des Lions. Voilà.
Sois dans la conversation. Il ne s'agit pas seulement de parler, mais c'est ta chance d'exprimer ton point de vue, de partager tes opinions et de t'engager avec une communauté qui valorise ton avis. Suivez-nous sur les réseaux sociaux, visitez notre site www.channelafrica.co.za et préparez-vous à partager vos points de vue sur Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
9 to 12 midday, Central African Time. On the Move with Palesa and Benjamin Mushatama.
Thank you so much, Musibudi Makura. Let's bring back Buntle Headbush for our latest business news.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Good morning. For another look at our business news this morning, South Africa's Economic Freedom Fighters Party's national chairperson, Nontando Noluchungu, has described the party's VAT march to National Treasury as a victory for the poor. The march comes 2 days before Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana's delivery of the national budget and has started at the Union Buildings in Pretoria. Speaking from the Union Buildings this morning, Noluchungu says today's march will further demonstrate how happy the party is that the VAT increase has been scrapped by the courts.
So today we're not only celebrating the victory, we are also here to reaffirm our stance against the increase of VAT and against the austerity measures that will affect the poor. Because you will know that any austerity measures, the first portfolios that they gun for, it is education, it is health, it is, all those portfolios that affect the poor.
South Africa's biggest mobile operator, Vodacom, reported a marginal rise in annual earnings on a stronger second half performance, but gains were capped by significant currency volatility. Vodacom, majority owned by UK-based Vodafone, said headlines earnings per share rose by 1.3% to 8.57 South African cents in the year ended March 31 from 8.46 South African cents a year earlier. CEO of Vodacom, Shamil Yousab, said given significant currency volatility, he was impressed with the strong finish the group produced in the last 6 months, supporting the confidence communicated in November last year that the organization is poised for a stronger second half performance. The South African Post Office has signed an agreement with the Unemployment Insurance Fund for $21 million. The fund aims to safeguard almost 6,000 jobs and aid the Post Office's revival through a strategic partnership. The Minister of Employment and Labour, Nomakosazana Meth, yesterday said the UIF, through the Temporary Employer-Employee Relief Scheme, TAS, will inject the funds into SAPO over a 6-month period. TAS coordinator at the UIF, Rachel Taukobong.
This is only for salaries, and we are saying that as we save the post office, their payroll funds, the 381 million that they would have ordinarily paid to the employees will be used elsewhere in terms of their turnaround strategy that they have implemented. So the post office will on a monthly basis be measured on the implementation of that turnaround strategy as well, including the verification that the money is paid to the employees.
Uber has said it's ready to go now with driverless taxis in the UK, but the government has put back the date it expects to approve fully self-driving vehicles. The previous administration said fully autonomous cars were set to be on the roads by 2026, but the new government says it is now more likely to happen in the second half of 2027. While limited self-driving technology is already permitted on UK roads, a human driver must be at the wheel and responsible for the vehicle, even if automated technology is being used. Taking a look at our indicators this morning, $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,599 naira 70. In Botswana, it's at 13 pula 40. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 58, and in Zambia, it's 26 kwacha 69. The BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 reals 66. Russia is 80 rubles 84. India, it's at 85 rupees 56. In China, it's at 7 yuan 20. And South Africa, $1 is trading at 18 rand 2 cents. $1 is trading at 75 pence to the British pound and 89 to the euro. Taking a look at our commodities this morning, gold is trading at $3,225 and platinum at $991 per ounce, while Brent crude oil is at $65.26 a barrel. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I'm Bontle Hetbush.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
My name is Neto, N-E-T-O Chamani. Osiyatiko, Nengezimo, Mkhanju, Phandle kunjani moyani. Voko tendele. Africa at Play, asiteleli siyashaya. Africa's velvet voice is in the house. Africa at Play is a place to be, where we speak all things sport and music, from the African continent to the rest of the world. We speak to your bundles of joy in sport, 12-year-olds and below, teenagers in sport. And we speak to elite athletes, administrators, coaches, and all the behind-the-scenes stakeholders of sport and music. Africa at Play, asiteleli siyashaya. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah.
9 to 12 midday, Central African Time. On the move with Palesa and Benjamin Mushatama. Partner with Channel Africa, because Africa's voice is the future. Africa is a story, a living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other. Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent, African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices: English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens, and Channel Africa makes sure of it. For business, for culture, for Africa. Partner with Channel Africa, because Africa's voice is the future. Africa is a story, a living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other. Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent, African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices: English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens, and Channel Africa makes sure of it. For business, for culture, for Africa, partner with Channel Africa, because Africa's voice is the future. Africa is a story, a living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other. Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent, African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices: English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens, and Channel Africa makes sure of it. For business, for culture, for Africa, partner with Channel Africa, because Africa's voice is the future. Africa is a story, a living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other. Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent, African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa.
The relaxing sounds of Ali Farka Toure. This one is titled Sukora. It's 10:49 Central Africa time. We're going into what's going on social media in the world of TikTok, where I live many times, right? And we're going to take a look at that. So recently, Ben, I went on a safari, right? I went on a safari.
Cool.
And on one of the game drives, we were driving in the middle of what is a river. And, you know, on the one side is the river, and it's, you know, going down, and the other side is a waterfall. So there's somewhere where we can drive in between the river and the water flowing through the waterfall. And I looked at this because sometimes there are things to me that I'm sure can scientifically be proven, can scientifically make sense. But if you remove the science from it, you're just like, this thing makes no sense at all. Because now I'm looking at this river. On this one side, it's like a dam. So it's not like a flowing river from the top. It's a dam, it's a closed dam. But the water water is flowing from the dam into this waterfall and down into this river. And the water's falling. There's so much water. There's so much water falling down this waterfall. It's incredible. It's beautiful. Just such a spectacular view. But I'm asking myself, why is the dam not getting empty? Like, it feels like a simulation of sorts because, the water keeps coming out. There's nothing right now refilling the water on the dam side. So why is the water not getting empty on the side where the water is flowing out? And sometimes we see those things happening. Like, maybe we live in a simulation of sorts because there are things that just maybe make scientific sense. They are happening, they're there, but they just make no sense at all. And one of them that I also had thought about was confirmed to me by a user on TikTok who thought about, we probably live in a simulation because how is this possible? Listen to this.
The reason I know we're in a simulation is because how can a truck, a car, a taxi, and a van all fit in the same lane? Like, how are they all in the same lane? And so the car that sits two people and has this much space between the two people, and the truck that has cargo for days, and the bus that has.
But honestly, I've thought about this.
This is stupid. And another
okay. Fade.
Lane on the top.
You know why I think it's not stupid? I've thought about the same thing. If you look at a lane, right? If you look at any lane, when I'm driving the lane and I look at other cars, small vehicles in the lane, there's only a little bit of space on the left and on the right, right? Mm-hmm. And inside the car, I'm sitting here, you're sitting next to me pretty much, and the people, there's 3 people at the back or 4 people at the back, if they're really tiny people. But go into a bus. If you go into a bus, there's 2 people sitting on one side of the bus, there's a passage where 1 or 2 people can stand, and there's 2 people on the other side of sitting on the other side of the bus. That's about 4 to 6 people that can fit sitting next to each other in a bus. But how come that same bus can fit in the same lane where only a little space is left on each side when a car drives there?
No, it doesn't work like that.
How does it work?
Because you don't know how much space is. It's not the same amount of space on either side of a bus and a sedan.
Yes, but that's the thing. Because it's not the same amount of space, how come we are fitting in the same lane? And also, have you seen those big abnormal trucks?
It's not the same space that you leave in your sedan or your little small car to a bus. There's no way that you're leaving the same space. Yes, actually, the bus leaves less space.
The bus leaves less space, but a bus and a truck can still drive side by side without touching. That means it's still enough space. That means we're still fitting in the same lane. I mean, that's what I'm saying. These things are maybe scientifically correct, but it feels like it doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to me.
Makes total sense to me. The lanes are huge, and they're huge enough for the biggest vehicle on that lane.
The lanes are not big enough. The lanes are so small. How are we all fitting in there? Is there anything that you've looked at then that I'm sure can be scientifically proven, but you're like, this actually doesn't make any real time sense?
No, there's nothing.
Nothing. Mm-hmm. So everything for you makes perfect sense.
Absolute sense.
Well, then that's just you, Benji, because the world is a very, very complex and sometimes confusing place.
The road lane is big enough.
Can you tell me why the water in the dam is not finishing?
It depends on how big the dam is.
I mean, it's a big dam, but it's a lot of water gushing out.
Yeah, but I mean, the dam
why is the water not getting empty on the one side?
Actually, there's a huge water supply somewhere that's actually coming into the dam.
I didn't see the water supply.
Just because you didn't see it doesn't mean
I didn't see the water supply. There was no water supply. The dam was closed.
No.
The dam was closed and the dam was there and then the water was coming out, but the dam kept on being full. Well, I'm sure you're not maybe as intelligent as Benjamin is, where everything in the world makes sense.
I'm not intelligent at all.
Is there something that you think about that feels like this world is certainly a simulation? There must be cameras. Someone tell me if this is a prank, because some things in the world don't make sense. The dam and the waterfall makes absolutely no sense to me. And I know Ben says it's making sense why all the big cars are fitting in the same lane as the small cars. But let me tell you, there's a simulation out there and they're watching us. It's 10:55 Central Africa time. Let's hear what your renditions are. Give me a thought on some of the things that you look at it like, this makes completely no sense, but it exists. How? We'll keep things moving. You can join us on our live stream. We are live on Facebook. Say hello. We can see, well, we can't see you, but you can see us and you can engage with us on those live streams, and our responses are immediate. We can see you, and of course, tell us what you think. We can say that live on air. It's 10:55. Let's go to more music. AKA and Kiddo on this one. It's titled Company.
Welcome to the Matrix.
Own voices: English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens, and Channel Africa makes sure of it. For business, for culture, for Africa. Partner with Channel Africa, because Africa's voice is the future. Africa is a story, a living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other. Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent. African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices: English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens, and Channel Africa makes sure of it. For business, for culture, for Africa. Partner with Channel Africa, because Africa's voice is the future. Africa is a story, a living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other. Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent. African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices: English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25...
Shoo, beautiful one there. AKA and Kiddo. This one is titled Company. Wrapping up the second hour of On the Move this beautiful Monday morning. For now, let's go back to our news desk for our final installment of the news this morning.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Palesa. Looking at your top stories, Libyan Prime Minister says eliminating militias is an ongoing project, and Israel ready to allow a limited amount of food into Gaza. Your latest news, greetings to our listeners. Libyan Prime Minister Abdul Hamid al-Dabeiba has said eliminating militias is an ongoing project. This is following a ceasefire after deadly clashes last week remained in place. Dabeiba is the country's internationally recognized leader in the West, based in Tripoli. After Dabeiba on Tuesday ordered the armed groups to be dismantled, Tripoli was rocked by its fiercest clashes in years between two armed groups. The government announced a ceasefire on Wednesday. It followed Monday's killing of major militia chief Abdul Ghani Kirkli, widely known as Ganiwa, and the sudden defeat of his stabilization support apparatus group by factions aligned with Dabeiba. On Friday, at least 3 ministers resigned in sympathy with hundreds of protesters who took to the streets calling for Dabeiba's ouster. The National Prosecuting Authority says it will apply for the extradition of Nigerian televangelist Timothy Omotoso should its appeal for his acquittal succeed. The NPA has confirmed that it will proceed with the appeal. Omotoso returned to his country of origin yesterday. He voluntarily opted to be deported after immigration authorities arrested him in East London in the Eastern Cape province earlier this month. The NPA says the law does not require active participation or presence of an accused person during a court hearing of an appeal. Meanwhile, the South African Democratic Alliance Party says a lack of skills and experience in the National Prosecuting Authority is seriously hampering its ability to bring successful prosecutions. This after the High Court in Gqeberha in the Eastern Cape province acquitted Nigerian televangelist Timothy Omotoso and 2 others last month. The trio faced over 30 charges, including rape, human trafficking and racketeering. The spokesperson on Justice and Constitutional Development, Advocate Glenys Breitenbach, explains.
One of the reasons is that as soon as people become skilled, experienced, they get poached by private enterprise because they can pay so much more. But the fact of the matter is that prosecuting is a job that you learn on the job. You can't learn it at university. It doesn't matter how well qualified you are. Prosecuting is a job that you learn by doing it. And the people who have had all that expertise are now retiring. And those skills are not being retained in any form of fashion. And the young prosecutors have nobody to learn from. So there's a lack of skills, there's a lack of experience, there's a lack of exposure. And this is starting to show in the way that big matters are being handled.
A BBC investigation has found evidence of children as young as 15 being sexually abused after being trafficked into illegal mines across South Africa. There are testimonies from former illegal miners, researchers and charities that gangs are luring children from neighboring countries. Gugu Qaba from the Save the Children spoke to some of the victims.
They start by grooming them. They start by acting like they like them. And then, obviously, the adult will do it today. And because they showed you as a child that they like you, they would want to do it again the next day and the other day.
Lastly, Israel says it is ready to allow a limited amount of food into Gaza, ending a 10-week blockade that has brought the territory to the brink of famine. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said a starvation crisis would jeopardize the renewed military offensive against Hamas. The announcement comes after pressure from the U.S. Extensive Israeli ground operations have begun across Gaza and deadly airstrikes continued overnight. The BBC's Yolanda Nell.
With global experts warning of famine, Israel's continuing blockade of Gaza, which it said was to put pressure on Hamas, has caused an international outcry. While Israel insists it's sticking to its controversial plans for a new aid system, for now, the UN, which has supplies piled up at Gaza's crossings, has confirmed that it's been approached about resuming deliveries. Israel's military is continuing its most extensive ground operations since ending a ceasefire 2 months ago.
Recapping on your top stories, Libyan Prime Minister Abdul Hamid al-Dabeiba has said eliminating militias is an ongoing project. This is following a ceasefire after deadly clashes last week remained in place. Now, for any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us at +27 11714 4459. Channel Africa News, I am Onele Ntsinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective. Compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle. We deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens, and Channel Africa makes sure of it. For business, for culture, for Africa.
Perspective with myself, Palesa and Benjamin Moshatama. We continue to be on the move. This time, we're looking at our fitness and nutrition feature, where we, of course, unpack things that are fitness and nutrition related. And you know what? Today, and actually recently, I've been packing a lunchbox to work. Why? Because I feel like the more I've been exercising, I'm actually getting hungrier around this time of the morning. So now I've been trying to pack a lunchbox every now and then. It's not my usual thing, because usually I would just come to work, not eat breakfast, and maybe I'd eat after my work when I get home or when I cook dinner. So I usually eat like 1, maybe 2 times a day. But exercise does definitely make you hungrier. So I have a lunchbox now. I also have a lunchbox of some of my leftover dinner from yesterday. So I'm going to enjoy that after the show and then go on to gym. So hopefully I have a little bit of energy. And it seems like, the people that are going into these fitness trends, using food as part of, as an integral part of this trend, not only making sure that you keep eating the right diet, but also saving a lot of time. We know that we love a little bit of convenience, but sometimes it takes time to inconvenience yourself in order to have more convenience during the week. When you're busy, you go in work, you go into gym, and there are other things happening in your life. So there's this trend of meal prepping. And you see it all over social media, where people will make like a breakfast meal, lunch and dinner a week ahead. But what I don't like about this meal prepping trend is that you have to eat this very same thing now for the 7 days in this week. But it's a great way to organize your life, to have good and nutritious meals readily available for you, especially during the busy work week, but also to assure that you're eating the right food you need. So we're going into that, this meal prepping. We'll be speaking to Oba Keng, also known as Fit Obi Makapane, who's a fitness expert and personal trainer, to chat to us about meal prepping.
Hey, we're looking forward to that. Hey, the show is never the same without you, the listener. We always love having you as part of our Channel Africa family. Hey, you are African and you are assertive in how you see yourself. In fact, the way that we see ourselves on the African continent is always changing. It's always being revived, and there's always a sense of pride in who we are. So become part of that pride that we find ourselves to be right here on Channel Africa. You can do that by always being in tune of the African perspective by tuning into all our platforms. Remember that you can find us on social media at Channel Africa 1 being that handle. Remember, follow us on X at Channel Africa 1. Follow us on Instagram at Channel Africa 1. Follow us on our TikTok at Channel Africa 1. Should I say at Channel Africa 1 a little bit more again so you get it? Remember, it's the number 1 at the end of our our name, Channel Africa. So just search Channel Africa. You'll find a number 1 there at the end, and then you can actually follow us. Channel Africa 1 is that particular handle. But also download the SABC Plus app. It is a fantastic app that makes sure that you get all the content here on Channel Africa absolutely free. All you have to do is make sure that you connected to Wi-Fi. So download that app, and you can find us in our radio station section. SABC Plus, it's simply that. You can just get it on any app store, and that app store will actually make sure that it's on your phone, or you can actually search for it online, and you'll find that URL. Hey man, let's get going. I'm looking forward to our nutrition and fitness feature today. It's going to be a fun one.
Darubini ya Afrika na I am Henry Shakif.
Hawa wa Afrika Kusini wenye asili ya kizungu ambao wamepewa ukimbizi huko nchini Marekani. Je, nini chanzo cha wao kuomba ukimbizi nchini Marekani?
Wenyewe hawajaomba ukimbizi. Kuna shirika fulani inaitwa AfriForum, shirika mbili za wazungu ambao wanatetea haki ya wazungu hapa, AfriForum na Solidarity. Hao walienda Marekani kufanya kampeni kusema kwamba wazungu wananyanyaswa hapa Afrika Kusini, na walivyofanya hiyo kampeni, serikali iweze kuwafuatilia kujua nini ambacho mnasema kwamba mnanyanyaswa.
Kuna namna ya wao kwamba wamepoteza uraia wa Afrika Kusini, na je, endapo Trump akamaliza muda wake madarakani, uhalali wao wa kuishi nchini Marekani ukoje?
Itakuwa vigumu, kifupi itakuwa vigumu wenyewe kupoteza uraia wao.
Darubini ya Afrika 11 kamili hadi 12 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati.
9 to 12 midday Central African Time. On the Move with Palesa and Benjamin Mushatama.
There's a new trend that's taking over our kitchens and lunch boxes as well as our TikTok feeds. It's the meal prep culture. This is our fitness and nutrition feature here on The Move. And once the secret weapon of bodybuilders and fitness fanatics, meal prepping has gone mainstream and everyone is participating. Well, everyone except me. Whether it's saving time that you want, or maybe eating healthier, budgeting better, or just reducing food stress, more people are getting intentional about what and how they eat. But behind the organized containers and the perfectly portioned meals lies a bigger story about how we manage our lives, how we manage our health, and our relationships with food. So, is meal prepping a modern day life hack, or is it just another performance of wellness culture? We're answering this question this morning with Oba Keng Makapane, also known as Fit Obi, who's a fitness expert and personal trainer. Obi, thank you so much for your time. Performative fitness is a real thing, and there's so many ways that being trendy makes you do things that you wouldn't normally do, right?
Good morning, Palesa. I hope you are well. So, yeah, meal prepping, hey? I know that in modern day, people might say, it's such a trend because everyone on TikTok is doing it and it looks so cool. But I started meal prepping back in 2019, I think it was.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been that long. I've obviously fallen on and off, but I've gone back to it. And I think, to be honest, there are three things I look at when I'm meal prepping. Firstly, I'm saving time. As someone who works in the corporate world and is trying to take care of their body, meal prepping honestly saves me so much time. Secondly, it saves me money. In today's economy, as an economist, I know that money is tight and we need to always tighten our belts. So it helps me reduce how much food I'm wasting and unnecessary takeout. And thirdly, it just helps me, it just makes it easier for me to make healthier choices. So that's why I tend to meal prep. I don't know why other people do it, but I'm always happy to see people meal prepping because I think the way the world is moving so fast and we're constantly on the move, it's easy to just grab takeout because you're like, you know what, I don't have food, I don't have time, I'm just going to grab takeout. But you don't realize how much that is eating into your pocket. And after some time, after winter, you look at your body and you're like, I'm not happy because of the
Yeah.
choices that you've made.
You know, you're absolutely right. And what we're seeing in the trend, right, is people who have these beautiful glass containers and they're cooking this food in big pots, and then maybe there's a little bit of vegetable there, some meat, or maybe there's like quinoa or rice and some beans, just various things that people put in there. And then they put the same meal in all these containers, and others go in the fridge and some go in the freezer. And I have an issue with that. First of all, because not everyone has such a beautiful aesthetic life, and so we feel like, you know, we can't actually participate because look, these people have aesthetic fridges and aesthetic containers, and their food they're putting in there is not something that might be affordable to everyone. But even more so, I don't want to eat the same thing for 7 days.
That's true, right? And I 100% support that. So when I started meal prepping, I was like everyone else, where I had beans for 4 days. And sooner or later I realized that that is not sustainable. Like, there's no way I can survive like that.
Yeah.
But let's say, for example, you buy a full chicken, right? And you live by yourself or with a spouse. You guys are not going to eat the full chicken, assuming using like one lunch. It's not going to be just one meal and you guys eat it, right? Instead, you're going to use that full chicken either for dinner and then lunch again, or like 2 lunches and 1 dinner.
Are you sure that we're not going to finish that?
Ben is like, try me.
Hey, chicken imunandi, you know we love chicken. No, but I get your point, and I think that's a smart way of seeing it. It's just also how you can portion your meals in a way of diversifying how you utilize one product, right?
Exactly. So using one product to like do different things. So for example, today we have chicken and rice, and then tomorrow we take the same chicken, we shred it, and we make chicken sandwiches, chicken and mayo sandwiches. The last day we take the last piece of chicken and, I don't know, make it into a bit of stew. So it's about taking specific products and dividing them in such a way that will allow you to have a variety. Because let's be honest, not all of us are having like steak, chicken, lamb in 1 week. Like, you generally have pretty much the same thing as the month goes, and you just need to make sure that you prepare the main thing, so you don't have to cook the chicken every single day. It's already cooked. You just, plan it into a meal that you want to plan out or you want to eat that day.
I mean, it is something that needs you to actually plan out, and I think that you can help us kind of unpack how do you actually plan, just prepping for your meal, because there is a bit of effort in it. Where do you start?
Okay, so firstly, you need to look at, what is it that I eat for breakfast, right? And it takes intention. You need to be very intentional. So I generally do this on like a Sunday morning. I'll write out, what did I eat last week? How did I feel about it? What do I want to eat this week? And it also has to align with the goals that you have for yourself. So once you've done that, you then write out a grocery list. In the grocery list, you also check what is currently in your cupboard. Last week, for example, this week is Mampara week for all of us. So the best thing
don't remind us, please. Yo.
So the best thing one would have done is go to a cupboard first yesterday and check what do they have and how can they remix it and play around with that. And then whatever ingredients you're missing, then you check your budget and you buy accordingly, right? But by you buying according to a meal plan or a meal prep, it helps you because then you don't go to the shop and go out by out and picking things that you're like, actually, I might feel like this one day this week. You actually are very intentional, and you write down your meals to say, I'm eating chicken for 3 days this week. How much chicken am I going to need? And it's not easy. Like, the first couple of weeks, you're going to struggle. But as the months go by, you'll know that, okay, in a week, I actually just eat chicken and lamb, and that's all I need. Or I eat chicken and chickpeas. That's all I need. But it's about picking your meals, making a grocery list, cooking in batches, and by batches, I mean the main products, and then making sure that you store your food accordingly. Personally, I don't freeze my food because I don't like the taste of defrosted food. I just make sure that I cook for the first 3 days of the week, and then I know that my Wednesdays are free, so I'll cook for Thursday and Friday on Wednesday. Then the weekends, you can be more flexible because you need to live a balanced life after all, right? So the weekends can be a bit more flexible.
Yeah, we do want to eat something a little bit more fun on the weekend. But, meal prepping was usually something that only, bodybuilders and fitness fanatics used to do because it has, obviously great benefits for those who are deeply into fitness. But it seems like the everyday person has also taken on this meal prep. When it comes to fitness and nutrition, what are the benefits? But also, what are the benefits for the everyday person to actually start meal prepping? And maybe you can give us a few more tips on how to go about it. We need to take a break though right now. When we come back, you can let us know what some of these benefits would be and why I should try again to go back into meal prepping, because I don't think I've tried hard enough. I always thought it's quite bizarre that people want to eat the same thing every day. But now that you've told us that it doesn't actually have to be the same meal every day, I might give it another try. So we'll get more tips from you after this.
Africa. It's time to plug into the heartbeat of the continent. Tune in to Channel Africa, your go-to radio station that broadcasts in 5 different languages.
L'Afrique du Sud célèbre la journée nationale du
Kabla hujaitwa kwa jina la Double K
or more of our forests have been destroyed. Partido Africano da Independência da Guiné.
See, Channel Africa represents every corner of this amazing land. From Lagos to Cape Town, Nairobi to Dakar, we've got you covered with the freshest news, music, and cultures. So, turn up the volume, feel the rhythm. And join the conversation. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Hashtag on the move and connect with us.
Hey, we're speaking about meal prepping. It seems like it is becoming a big hack that everyone is getting into, and people are using it as a way to budget a little bit better, to save time on meal preparations, and also to reduce that food stress. But also, it's a great way to monitor the way that you are eating. Helping us on this one is Obakeng Fit Obi Makapane, a fitness expert and personal trainer. And you were speaking earlier on about you're an accountant, right? Did you say an accountant, Obakeng?
I'm an economist.
Economist, right? Yeah, an economist. And I'm sure that this is an economy of food here, and it kind of relates in a way, because I can understand some of the benefits. And let's go to where you left off, because you were still speaking about the fact that you can actually manage just your food purchases. I'm sure that's also a good way to manage food wastage.
Yes, definitely. If you're going to be cooking for the first 3 days of the week, right, you know exactly what you're eating, and you then don't go out your way to go find an alternative. I, for example, as someone who is in the corporate world but also trying to keep healthy, I go through my stressful days where I'm like, I actually don't want to eat while I prepared. I want something junky. I want something that's going to, make me feel better. But when I get home, that food is staring at me in the fridge, and I'm like, fine, you know what, it's okay. I'll just eat whatever's in the fridge right now. So I think reducing waste is one of the benefits, but also it saves you money because there's food at home. You know how our parents used to say,
"Oh, there's food at home." I hated that phrase.
So now you become that adult who's like, you know what, let me save money because there's food at home, and that's what meal prep has done for me. Also, you don't have to cook multiple times. We are living very busy lives. We know people are working about 2 jobs. Some people are moms, they're working, they are students. Everyone is just so busy. So when you already have the food there, you don't have to take 30 minutes or an hour in the evening to then make that food. And it reduces the amount of panic and stress that you have after a long day. Those are some of the benefits. And these can be benefits for students, for people who are working 9 to 5, for people who are creators, for someone managing a household, for moms, and for big families where, there's no time to be preparing food each and every day. And also for an average person, my tips, if you are just an average person starting off, please don't go for aesthetics. Like, just prep your meals like normal and make sure Hey,
Mara, we like the aesthetics. Don't spoil it for us.
Also, we don't have enough scuffteens for the aesthetics, right? Meaning we don't have enough lunch boxes. So is it okay if I put some of my meals in a glass lunchbox and the other in an old ice cream container?
Definitely. You know, I for example, have 3 lunch boxes that I use for like my lunches, but everything else goes into, you know, the casserole dishes. Yeah,
Yes.
I use casserole dishes
Okay.
for my big meals.
So you go old school, man.
Yeah, I go old school. And that's okay, because then when I dish it up into my nice custine, you wouldn't know that it's actually coming from a casserole dish and not a fancy custine. Also, stick to easy recipes. Like there's stir fry, there's pasta, there's salads, there's wraps that you can make. Wraps are very easy. I like wraps for lunch. Also, use what you already have. Like I said, check your fridge, check your pantry before you go, or your cupboard before you go shopping. Because if you have the food already, there's no need for you to buy the stuff.
Yeah.
Start small. Start by preparing just lunch for the first 3 days of the week. You don't have to prepare lunch and dinner, because that's what we see on TikTok, right? Someone will prepare breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And it's like, I can't do that. That's overwhelming. So start small. Say, okay, I'm going to do overnight oats for the next 3 days, and I'll do wraps for lunch. Now you know that, okay, breakfast and lunch are sorted, and see how you feel about it. If it's not something that works for you and you'd rather have a variety for breakfast, then change it up and maybe do a meal prep of just lunch and dinner. You know, let it be a routine that fits your lifestyle and what you want to achieve. If you're going to go via what social media does, chances are you're going to fail hard, and it's going to be sad because then you want to go back and it's just not working. And also use reusable containers that make sure that you are able to store your food in the most effective and efficient manner. In the country that we live in, power is not always guaranteed, so I wouldn't advise anyone to prepare for a whole week. Just prepare for the first 3 days and store the food knowing that it's not going to go off.
Yeah, but I like to speak about that because I think that's an important thing you highlighting there. Usually we follow these trends blindly, and this has something to do with food. Food goes in our body, and sometimes because we don't understand the science of foods, we might be meal prepping the wrong types of food. So maybe sometimes we're putting foods that don't belong, together in the same plate in a container. Maybe foods that can't be stored for a long period of time, and we don't understand that, and maybe that could be harmful. Are there harmful sides of meal prepping if you don't really understand the science of the foods that you're putting together, how long they can be in the fridge, how long they can stay in certain ways, and how consumable they are after being there for 3 days to a week sometimes?
I'm actually going to tell you guys a funny story. So when I was in varsity and I started the meal prepping thing, I used to buy broccoli, right? And you know the smell of broccoli when it's overcooked. There's this weird smell.
Okay.
So I meal prepped broccoli, and I thought you could leave broccoli in a plastic container for a week. So that's what I did. And then on Friday, when I opened it, I'm like, no, man, this smells funny. But I was like, oh, man, broccoli smells funny anyway. So I ate it.
Ooh.
And then I got sick. I got a stomach bug. And I went to the doctor. And I'm like, this is weird. What did you eat? And I took my doctor through everything. And I'm like, no, I haven't changed my diet. I said, have you stored food for a while? I'm like, no, it's just from last week, Monday. And he was like, ma'am, no. No.
Monday to Monday. No.
Like, no, don't do that.
Okay.
I was different. I was trying to save money. Okay, I was stingy, but, I was trying to save money. But then I learned about the method of blanching your vegetables. So you don't cook them fully. You just leave them to a point where they're a bit crunchy, right? And you're not allowed to store cooked vegetables for more than a week. That is not normal. So make sure that when you store your food as well, you check the type of containers. Read the labeling when you buy a container at the back. The reason glass containers are so popular now is because they help food. They retain the freshness of the food for longer. It's not just about the aesthetics, but our Tupperwares. Remember those old Tupperwares with the plastic thingy?
Yes.
Finish. When you put those sometimes in the microwave, they tend to burn just a little bit. You might not notice it at first, but over time they burn over, right? And that then causes the food not to be the best. But those glass containers are able to retain the material and chemicals in them, so they don't affect our food in a negative manner. So that's why the glass containers are popular. But those also can be bought at like a cheaper store. I won't mention the stores, but you can find them at cheaper stores.
Yeah.
That sell home goods. So maybe look at those as an alternative. I know that they do break, but make sure that you do read the back of your container. Is it something that can go into the microwave? Can it be dishwashed? And how do you take care of it? That is very important in how you store your food. And can people stop decanting milk into glass containers? The reason milk is certain, because think about it this way: the reason it was produced in that plastic. I guess sometimes you get a carton of milk in a long plastic thing. The reason they don't do it in glass is not because plastic is cheaper, but also how it's manufactured, the milk itself is able to stay longer in that. The minute you decant it into a glass container, the bottom, there's this, like, have you ever seen like milk go rotten? It starts separating. That happens quicker in a glass container than it does in what it has been stored in from manufacturing. So please, I know aesthetics are important, but like, can we stick to the normal things as well?
Fantastic. And also, do you think you should consider a nutritionist when you are actually meal prepping? Do you think that's a must? Or what's your take on that? Just in 30 seconds as we wrap up, Obakeng.
Consider a nutritionist if you have health goals. If you're someone who's generally healthy and you know that food you don't have any food allergies, then it's okay. If you don't have diabetes or pre-diabetic, then you also find, and high blood pressure as well. But if you have any of those chronic illnesses, I think consider a nutritionist or a dietitian.
Thank you so much, Obakeng. Where do we find you online?
You can find me on Instagram and on Twitter. I am Obakeng_FitOV. Or you can find me on another Instagram page where I post about my meal prep as simplyhealthy_FitOV.
This has been fun. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, and have a good one.
You too. It is a Monday, so yeah, we start slowly, but I'm sure when it comes to Friday, things will pick up. Well, that's Obakeng Fit Obi Makapane, fitness expert and personal trainer. What do you think about meal prepping? Let us know your side of things. That WhatsApp number +2763 469126, or you can engage with us on that live stream. Thank you for joining us on our Facebook live stream as well as on YouTube as well as Instagram. You are listening to Channel Africa. Let's wrap up the morning sports update. I know it's been a heavy weekend. Formula One, tennis has been fantastic this weekend. Let's find out what we have in our latest sports.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
And a very good morning from the sports desk. I am Mosibu Dimakura with your final sports update for the morning. We'll start here. So South Africa won their maiden Total Energies CAF Under-20 Africa Cup of Nations title following a hard-fought 1-0 victory over Morocco in Sunday night's final at the 30 June Stadium in Cairo, Egypt. Molemo Kegana's stunning second-half strike proved decisive. This as the South Africans claimed the trophy, as also rewrote history by overcoming the North African opponent in the tournament for the very first time. Both sides entering the final unbeaten, boasting some of the tournament's best defensive records. South Africa's victory marks also their first ever youth continental triumph and also adds them to the growing list of recent debut winners following Senegal back in 2023. It also broke their jinx against North African opponents, ending a run of 5 previous defeats, all by a single goal margin. So this was the crowning moment from last night when Amajita were officially confirmed champions of the Under-20 AFCON tournament.
Amajita, Under-20 AFCON champions. South Africa, if you didn't know, this is Amajita, champions, conquerors of the continent. Hoisting that trophy into the heavens, and they will celebrate all night long. What a special night, what a special tournament for Amajita. Counted out at the start when they lost to Egypt, and they've only gone on to win the lot.
Now, South Africa's under-20 goalkeeper Fletcher Lowe was named the Total Energies Man of the Match after his heroic display, helping South Africa secure that 1-0 victory over Morocco in that final last night. Now, the shot stopper delivered another commanding performance between the posts, also producing a string of crucial saves to deny the North Africans as well as ensure South Africa lifted their first ever under-20 AFCON title. Lowe, who has been one of the standout players of this year's tournament, was at his brilliant best again at the Curragh International Stadium last night.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it means a lot to not only me but for the team. This award is for the team. I mean, with only me and without them, we'd be nowhere. Together we're stronger. Yeah, I mean, obviously it's nice to do my part, but the real plaudits go out to everyone who does the work. Not even the people behind the scenes, physios, doctors, fitness coaches, and the players as well. I mean, it's amazing what we've been able to do. Thank you so much.
Meanwhile, South Africa's Tylen Smith was named the best player of the tournament in Egypt following his pivotal role in guiding the Amajita side to their first ever continental title. The 19-year-old midfielder delivered consistently influential performances throughout the course of the tournament and was also quite instrumental in South Africa's 1-0 victory over Morocco in Sunday's final at the Curragh International Stadium. Smith, also known for his composure, creativity, as well as ability to dictate the tempo, scored the crucial semi-final winner against Nigeria and also proved quite vital in linking the midfield as well as the attack across the tournament. So a massive congratulations there to Amajita winning South Africa's first ever junior AFCON title. They are set, of course, to return back home tomorrow, hopefully to a hero's welcome. We are anticipating that welcome at the OR Tambo International Airport. On to golf news now. Jon Rahm plans to quickly move past his painful collapse to lose the PGA Championship on Sunday, already talking with the confidence about the next month's US Open tournament. Now, the two-time major winner from Spain suffered his most humbling major defeat, falling from a share of the lead and also losing to top-ranked Scotty Scheffler at Quail Hollow. Now, Rahm, the 2021 US Open as well as the 2023 Masters Open champion, opened with 7 pars and was 5 strokes behind Scheffler, but then birdied 3 of the next 4 holes and grabbed a share of the lead, only to stumble down the stretch with a bogey and 2 double bogeys on the final 3 holes. He's looking forward to going home and spending time with his children.
But a lot of positive to take from this week. I know it's pretty fresh wound right now, but there's been a lot of good happening this week and a lot of positive feelings to take for the rest of the year.
And finally, made by basketball captain Lebesa Selebe is confident that they can make a huge impression as they make their debut at the Basketball Africa tournament in Rwanda representing South Africa. So the Blue Soldiers, a Johannesburg-based Basketball Africa League team, replaces the Cape Town Tigers, who also became a familiar representative for South Africa in the Basketball Africa League over the last few years, with the Kigali Nile Conference now underway and South Africa looking to give a good account of themselves at this year's tournament. The captain Selebe saying that they are coming to this tournament with a winning mentality.
The mindset is to win, to just set the tone for the rest of the 10 days, a tone of preparation, a tone of just playing the basketball that we would like to go out there and play. That's good defense, that's execution on offense, not letting the stage get to us. We all know and accept that this is a very high stage of basketball, but we just want to go out there and execute one possession at a time.
It's a wrap from the sports desk at the Sawa. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Parlez-vous couramment le français? Êtes-vous passionné par la radio? Et êtes-vous qualifié pour travailler en Afrique du Sud? Envoyez-nous votre CV et vos 3 minutes démo en MP3 à @channelafrica.co.za pour avoir une chance de rejoindre la famille Channel Africa. Si vous n'avez pas de réponse après 14 jours, cela signifie que vous n'avez pas été retenu. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Thank you so much, Musibu. Let's once again get our latest business news with Bundle Headbush.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thanks, Palesa. Good morning. South Africa's Deputy President Paul Mashatile has arrived in Paris. He has undertaken a working visit to France to cement bilateral relations with the European nation. The trip is also aimed at expanding cooperation projects as well as identifying new areas of cooperation with specific focus on trade and investment. Recently, International Relations Minister Ronald Lamola co-chaired the 9th session of the Forum for Political Dialogue between France and South Africa. Kaelihle Kumalo has more.
Deputy President Mashatile is set to take part in the South Africa-France Investment Conference, where Pretoria will intensify cooperation in the fields of infrastructure development, science, technology and innovation, education and skills development. They also want to improve the already strong people-to-people links between the two countries and increase the flow of tourism to South Africa from France. France is the 14th largest investor in South Africa, with about 400 French companies investing in sectors such as financial services, renewable energy, rail, chemicals, oil and gas.
South Africa's biggest mobile operator, Vodacom, reported a marginal rise in annual earnings on a stronger second half performance, but gains were capped by significant currency volatility. Vodacom, majority owned by UK-based Vodafone, said headline earnings per share rose by 1.3% to 8.57 South African cents in the year ended March 31, from 8.46 South African cents a year earlier. CEO of Vodacom, Shamil Yousab, said given significant currency volatility, he was impressed with the strong finish the group produced in the last 6 months, supporting the confidence communicated in November last year that the organization is poised for a stronger second half performance. The South African Post Office, SAPO, has signed an agreement with the Unemployment Insurance Fund for $21 million. The funds aim to safeguard almost 6,000 jobs and aid the post office's revival through a strategic partnership. The Minister of Employment and Labour, Noma Nkosazana Meth, yesterday said the UIF, through the Temporary Employer-Employee Relief Scheme, will inject the funds into SAPO over a 6-month period. TERS coordinator at the UIF, Rachel Taukobong.
This is only for salaries, and we are saying that as we save the post office their payroll funds, the 381 million that they would have ordinarily paid to the employees will be used elsewhere in terms of their turnaround strategy that they have implemented. So the post office will on a monthly basis be measured on the implementation of that turnaround strategy as well, including the verification that the money is paid to the employees.
Namibian President Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah says her working visit to Botswana and Zambia last week aimed to strengthen bilateral relations with the neighboring countries. She discussed a number of bilateral and regional matters with her counterparts and highlighted some of the benefits that the recently discovered oil and gas in her country would provide the entire region and Africa. President Ndaitwah also explored possible infrastructure projects and economic linkages through Namibian ports, including Walvis Bay.
We found it appropriate to ensure that all our neighbors who are not coastal towns, they are linked to the sea, hence making available the dry ports. And those dry ports are not for governments alone, but for the private sector.
Uber has said it's ready to go now with the driverless taxis in the UK, but the government has put back the date it expects to approve fully self-driving vehicles. The previous administration said fully autonomous cars were set to be on the roads by 2026, but the new government says it's now more likely to happen in the second half of 2027. While limited self-driving technology is already permitted on UK roads, a human driver must be at the wheel and responsible for the vehicle, even if automated technology is being used. Now, taking a look at our financial indicators this morning, $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,599 naira 70. In Botswana, it's at 13 pula 40. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 58. And in Zambia, it's at 26 kwacha 69. Taking a look at the BRICS countries this morning, $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 reals 66, Russia 80 rubles 84. In India, it's 85 rupees 56. China 7 yuan 20, and South Africa $1 is trading at 18 rand 2 cents. $1 is trading at 75 pence to the British pound and 89 to the euro. Looking at the commodities this morning, gold is trading at $3,225 and platinum at $991 per ounce, while Brent crude oil is at $65.26 a barrel. Those are your business news this morning. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I'm Buntle Hetbush.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Ahoy, matey!
Captain here to help, right, boys?
Set sail with us on a digital voyage like no other. Channel Africa has a treasure trove of awesomeness. That is our website and social media pages.
Tell me, why are you here?
We want you to be part of our adventure.
The winds are changing, Captain. And this time...
Imagine a world where curiosity knows no bounds, where entertainment meets enlightenment, and where every click leads to the African perspective. Visit us on our website, www.channelafrica.co.za, or follow us on Instagram or on X at Channel Africa 1. Go on, like us on Facebook at Channel Africa 1. So, spread the word. Tell a friend that Channel Africa's online variety is what they need on the web. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Channel Africa and you have got something in common. The thirst for knowledge. Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens, and Channel Africa makes sure of it. For business, for culture, for Africa. Partner with Channel Africa because Africa's voice is the future. Africa is a story, a living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other. Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent, African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices: English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens, and Channel Africa makes sure of it. For business, for culture, for Africa. Partner with Channel Africa because Africa's voice is the future. Africa is a story, a living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other. Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent. African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices. English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens, and Channel Africa makes sure of it. For business, for culture, for Africa, partner with Channel Africa, because Africa's voice is the future. Africa is a story, a living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other. Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent. African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices. English.
Thank you for joining us on DSTV Channel 802, OpenView 628, and on www.channelafrica.co.za. That's a beautiful one by Angelique Kijo. That one is titled Lon Vadjiro. Takes us to almost 10 minutes before the end of the show. I see someone has a meal prep not so far away from her desk.
This is definitely not meal prep. It's just last night's dinner put into a lunchbox. But just a little bit of something.
What's the difference between that and meal prepping?
No, it's because this wasn't meal prep. This was just dinner. It wasn't intentional. It's just, hey, let me have some of this for lunch today. And I was literally walking past the kitchen. I'm like, I kind of feel hungry. There was no thought process at all.
I've got 3 hours of a show to do, and I'm
gonna be hungry. I'm feeling hungry already. So let me try and save myself and grab something to eat.
Well, very soon she'll be able to eat anytime after we leave the studio. We only have 9 minutes left of the show. Remember, from midday Central African time, we'll have our latest Africa update, giving you the latest news on the African continent. It's a fantastic show because there you get snippets of what's happening in different parts of the continent. And what's fantastic about that show is that they do it so quickly, but they really give you a context of what's happening. And if you listen to them from Monday to Friday, you actually get the full story of what's happening in various African countries. So that's a good one. Yeah, man, we're about to get out of here. And we had such a cool show. Meal prepping, I think it's a good way. I think meal prepping for me, I don't know if it's a great thing to do, like taking stuff to work or taking stuff, but I like the idea of meal prepping in terms of what I'm doing in the kitchen, of what I'm thinking about my week, what I'm going to eat. I think that is something that can be beneficial for all homes.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know if I'm convinced. I don't think I'm going to do it for myself.
Yeah.
But
what's holding you back?
Oh, man, the time it takes. First of all, I don't want to eat the same food. That means, the day that I'm meal prepping, I have to prepare various foods at the same time. I don't know. I just think I'm a little bit lazy. Maybe that's the only thing.
Yeah,
there's nothing wrong with meal prepping. I'm just lazy.
Well, let's have some more music as we're about to get out of studio, but enjoy a little bit of the African groove.
Swahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens, and Channel Africa makes sure of it. For business, for culture, for Africa, partner with Channel Africa because Africa's voice is the future. Africa is a story, a living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other. Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent, African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices: English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel
And it's titled Skating. Before we head out of here, let's find out what's coming up on today's Africa Update. Lulu Gabu is here. Good morning, Lulu.
Good morning, and how are you?
Doing
Happy
good.
Monday.
Happy Monday to
Good
you.
weekend?
It was great.
Good. All right, so today on Africa Update, we're going to be looking at the protests that over poor sanitation services in Deep Kloof, that's in Soweto, the largest location in township, rather, in South Africa. So we'll unpack that, and with reports of 1 fatality and 1 injury. So it's a very difficult one. So something that we'll unpack in this protest: service delivery. This is what it's all about. And then also just a question that we have before we get to the question. A Chadema leader in Tanzania who was arrested a few weeks ago is going to be appearing in court, and we'll actually find out exactly how that is going to unfold and the reasons behind his arrest, as well as a former a Kenyan judge has been deported from Tanzania. So a lot to unpack on that front. But today we are going to be asking our listeners a question, just to find out what they think and what they feel with regards to service delivery protests. Do service delivery protests lead to meaningful change in your country, wherever you are, whether it's in the east or the south, the north of the African continent, or do they result in further instability? And share your views with myself on Africa Update. Your comments, send a WhatsApp on +27 63 406 9126. So the question again is, do service delivery protests lead to meaningful change in your country, or do they result in further instability? Something to unpack on Africa Update.
Thank you, Lulu. We'll be listening right here on Channel Africa. Stay with us. Lulu Gabu will be giving you the Africa Update in about 3 minutes. Have yourself a fantastic day. The On The Move team will be back again tomorrow. We'll leave you this one titled Azishe.
Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens, and Channel Africa makes sure of it. For business, for culture, for Africa, partner with Channel Africa because Africa's voice is the future. Africa is a story, a living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other. Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent, African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices: English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa. Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity with